Kumulainen about Gemara. Today's daf is daf Nunam Aleph. Today, Wednesday. So we'll begin at the bottom of Nunam days. In our Mishnah, we started off talking about if there was one Yavam and two sisters-in-law. So, for example, Reuben had two wives, and he decides to make a relationship with both of them, which you can't. You can only have one wife per family. Or there were two brothers. Reuben had one wife, but there were two brothers, and they both made overtures. So the question was if the second overture also has some validity. There are four kinds of connections that one can make. Two from the Torah, which is chalitza, which severs the ties and exonerates her from getting married, or bia, which marries her. And then we have two d'Rabbanan. One is maimer, which is like kedushin, but only with d'Rabbanan according to us. And as we'll see, we learned it before, Beshame holds it's not Torah. And the other one is get. Get severs the ties. You can no longer go ahead and marry because Ashallah Yim the vice. You went ahead and showed you're not interested, but you nevertheless still have to give chalitza afterwards. So Rabbi Gamliel said, you cannot have one mimer after another mimer. If you gave let's say Reuben had two wives, you gave one wife a mimer, you cannot then give the second wife a mimer as well, because we'll see in a minute why. And according to Chachamim, you could repeat the same exercise, and they both have some validity. And the difference would be that according to Gamliel, if you gave a mimer to the first one, let's say Leah, and then you give a mimer to Rachel, you're not allowed to marry any of Leah's relatives, but as far as Rachel is concerned, you can marry all the relatives because nothing really happened. For the Chamim, you cannot marry from either of them. What's the logic of this argument? We have machlekes of Rav and Abaya. When we learned the Mishnah yesterday, we gave Rav's explanation, and we'll see it here, but Abaya rejects it. Amar Rav says Rav. My time with the Ram Gamliel, what's the logic of Gamliel? The Mesapkla, he's not certain get. What is the effectiveness of get? Dachi, does get completely sever the ties, and therefore there's no longer any more zika, there's no longer a bond, there's no longer yibum, and it's totally free. Or it does not have that impact. And the Gemara explains in a minute. And Maimer, same thing with Maimer, as if he gave her kedushin to betroth her. Kani, was it effective? Kani, completely or not at all? So Gemara explains now. Get. Let's say Leah, you gave her a get and there's no longer any more yibum, then basa might cover. What you do with the second one? Absolutely nothing. So why should her relatives be forbidden to you? And if you're going to tell me that the first one, the get doesn't really have that ability to sever the ties, then basa and neither did it the second one. So the second one definitely, there's no suffix. Either way, the second one, nothing happened. It's only the first one's a suffix, and therefore, the Rabbanan, you cannot marry any of the relatives. Maimer, the same thing is with Maimer. Ikani, was it effective or not in the Kedushin? So Ikama, if it was effective, then you're engaged to the first wife. You cannot be engaged to two wives and the same husband. He's Basra Maikovic. What do you do with the second one? And if you can tell me that the first one nothing happened, then Basanami Loikani. And the second one also nothing happened. So that's what Rabbi Gamliel says. Says the Gemara. Abaya asked a question from a brisa. Based on your explanation that he was doubtful, he didn't know if it had a full impact or no impact, zero impact. It says a moed and Gamliel, certain cases, if he's moed, yes, get a for example, he gave a mimer first, and then instead of replicating the same thing, he gave a get after the mimer. So the mimer got her partially engaged, and therefore, but not fully. So there's part of it still that wasn't engaged to you, and therefore the get was effective on that part. Or a mimer after get so too. There's a mimer after the get as well. It's effective on that part. So you gave a get to one woman, and then you gave a mimer to another woman. Then the one who received the mimer requires a get, a divorce, because something happened. And also he goes further. The get achar bia u'mimer. And also, let's say he gave mimer to one woman, to one of the women, and then to the second woman, let's say he was married to three wives. To one of them he gave a get. The second one he had bia with. And now the third one, well, let's say the first one he gave a maimed. Second one he had beer with. Now the third wife he goes ahead and gives a get. That get is also effective, and it means that he can no longer live with the relative of the third one either. And so too, there's a maimed. You can have a maimed achabi, a get. You gave one wife a get. The second one you had relations with, and the third one you gave a maimed to. That maimed has effect, and you need a get, and the relatives are forbidden. Now, the question is very simple. If you tell me is not sure if a get really severs the ties, or if maimed really makes any impact. So Mamonoshech, step number 2 is beer. In both of these cases, the middle step is beer. The first case was either get a maimed, the second one was beer. But the second wife, it made beer. So Mamonoshech, by the time you got to the third one, there was nothing left. If you're telling me the get had no impact, and the second wife you made a beer, had a beer with, she's now totally Yevama, and all 3 women are exempt. So when the third one, you go ahead and you do either get or you do a minor, nothing happened because she's already married. The second one, you're already married to you. You can't have 2 wives and the same husband. So if it's a doubtful, so he asks the question, even then the beer should be treated as manushach. If the maimah is effective, then the maimah did everything. There's nothing left to go on. And if the maimah wasn't effective, the beer did everything. But definitely there's nothing left for the third one. It's not even a doubt. So why do we say that relatives of the third wife is also forbidden? The not be'ilah. The be'ilah bisman shehi b'chila ain't acharei klum. If it takes place first, there's nothing after, nothing left anymore to take effect to. There's no part of the woman that's free for another get or something to happen. Elor Baya. The Baya therefore says, I'll give you a whole different reason for them. You know why you cannot replicate the same act? Because he says, true, it's not a full union, let's say maimed, not a full union, it's only a partial union, but the second maimed will just repeat the first maimed. And therefore that little bit, that part of the woman that's shaykh for the maimed, you're already affected. They already tied her up to one woman too. There's no room for the second woman, second wife of Reuben to have that effect. He definitely had no question. But get the dochi maimed, the kind of get pushed away partially in a maimed is clean. You, Amar Rabbanan said, there's one side of the woman where neither of them is total. It's part of the woman you can give a get to and separate from you and diminish that relationship. And part of the woman has the potential for an engagement for the maimed. So therefore, get le mahani the second get doesn't do anything. Whatever is meant to be pushed away is very pushed away. So too, your kedushin evolution of the word because you already whatever part of the woman is able to be engaged to already happened. But get a chamaim, if you do a get, if you vary, and you have one woman you give a maimer to, and the other wife of Reuben you give a get to, or a maimer achre get, where you give first a get, and then the other woman you give a maimer to. Two different parts of the woman, and therefore it's effective. So how could the Rabban hold you could do a maimer after a maimer? Because they say the second maimer is not a repeat of the first maimer. First maimer connects part of the woman, and the second maimer connects the other part of the woman. So it can't happen. Kol chavachat kin Rabbanim. Rabbanim second each one get a maimer v'yivama and get a maimer by yivama, and therefore it's totally 2 different parts. Says the Gemara, Bahai be psula. He says, and a bia psula is that you shouldn't have. If you gave a maimer to Leah, let's say, the wife of Reuben, you had no right to have bia with Rachel, the second wife of Reuben, because you cannot build 2 homes from one wife. So he's saying here regarding the bia psula, on the one hand, adifa memaim, on the one hand, the bia. On the one, it's not a proper bia because it's a chsar, and that is because he shouldn't have done it. If he did it, what effect does it have? On one hand, it is stronger than what a maimer would have affected. On the other hand, grei of a maimer is also worse than a maimer. And he explains. Adifa maimer, how is it better than maimer? Rabbi Gamul holds one maimer after another replicated. It doesn't help at all. The second maimer is not effective. However, bia after maimer does help. If you have this, if you have bia with the other wife after the maimer, then it does help. As the Gemara says in the Brayse, the top page just learned that there is, if there's a get after there's a mimer, and then there's bia, and there's a get, you still have to do something for that get. All the relatives are forbidden to you. That means that what? That so therefore, on the other hand, it's stronger than a mimer, because a mimer after mimer doesn't work, but the bia after the mimer helps. In other words, so you did a mimer, then you did a bia, and he talks about a get after that. But if you did a mimer, then you did a bia. The bia had some kind of an effect. On the other hand, mimer has no effect. On the other hand, it's worse than a mimer. How's worse than mimer? You mimer again. If you did a mimer after get, it's fully effective, as you said before. Should you get whatever get leaves behind, get on those part of the woman, and that severs that tie, and the other part of the woman now gets stronger, strengthened to the mimer. You would be a get, but when it comes to bia after the get, is like Kadila the coolish year the get. He doesn't in the bia, which is after the get, is not koine whatever's left over from the get. And therefore we see that the bia is not as strong. Yeah. He says further, as I said before, that after the bia, you can make another mimer. I mean, there's still room for more for it to take effect. The bia doesn't take up the rest. The bia does not take up the rest of whatever the get. So there was get followed by bia followed by mimer. We learned over here of that the mimer has an effect. That means that even after the bia, there is still room for the mimer to have an effect, which shows that there's a get. We don't say that whatever the balance, the get reduced some of that relationship. We don't say, okay, well, now the balance of it is tied up in this beer. No, part of the rest of the woman is part of the beer, but there's room now for maimer as well. So we see that beer is not so strong. Does not take up the rest of the whatever the get leaves behind. Okay, says about it further. Sorry. Okay. Talk about we learned. Kates, we learned in the Brais, the Machlekes or Gamliel the Chacham as follows. Kates, when will say get? When does it say there's no get after get? You cannot repeat the same exercise twice. There's no mimer after mimer. There's no get after get. For example, Shtei Yevamos, Reuben was married to Leah and Rachel. Shenofel Lefnei Yavim met the before one Yava Echad Falsei Shimon. Nosan get lazu, the get lazu. He gave a get to Leah and he gave a get to Rachel. So he says that's it. Once he gave a get to Leah, whatever get Leah was, whatever part of the woman can be severed of that yibum, you already achieved. Nothing to be said about what you did with Rachel. Rul says. So you gave a get to each one. Rul says chaylit to the shayna. So you have to give a chalitza to the first one. But also the Krever, you're not allowed to marry relatives because it was affected. But you achieved nothing with the second one, so you can live with all the relatives. However, the Chacham say, nice and get lazu, the get lazu. Chacham say, if you gave a get to both of them, also the Krever. They say that even the second wife, Rachel's brother, offered into you. The chalitza la'achas mehen, and give chalitza to one of them. Give chalitza to one of them. You don't give both to one of them. Just like we say that what there are two wives to Reuben and there's one brother Shimon, the same would apply if there's only one wife to Reuben and two brothers. So both brothers gave the same rule holds that the second brother achieved nothing, and Chum hold, yes, did achieve something. How would you mean what do you mean when he said there's no mimer after mimer? So again, Reuben had two wives, Leah and Rachel, and also and he went ahead and he got engaged to Reuben Leah. And then Rachel and Will says, Mason get to the Shayna, and Will says, give a get to Leah, the first one that you married, give them to end the Maimer, then you give to end the Zika of Kedushin. But also the Krever forbidden all the relatives. But a mutter of Krever Shnia. The second wife was permitted to you because nothing happened. However, the Chachamim say, nice and get the shtei. I would say that both were effective. You give it, but you get to both. You get to both. Also, the Krever and both were effective, so therefore they're both forbidden to you. the chalitza l'achman, and you give chalitza to one of them, that's good enough. Chein ata'im. So the Chachamim say that both were effective. Two brothers, Shimon and Levi, and Reuben and one wife. All of them was analyzed what we just said. The Braisa noising as he gave it to both of them. The Lulu says was referred to also because ain't not live with a relative because it's like your chalutz and the sister your chalutz are married. The second one is ineffective. So Lema to have two rules. So here's the question of Shmuel. Why is it the question of Shmuel? Shmuel said cholatz the balas again. Shmuel said he gave a get. Let's say Reuben's wife and Shimon's wife fell before Levi, and if he Reuben had two wives, and they fell before Shimon, and he gave a get to one of them, and then he gave a chalitza to her. If he gave a chalitza to the woman that he gave a get to, because he gave a get to her, so it's already the tie is weaker. If he gave her a chalitza, we had this in the previous Gemara. If he gave her a chalitza, then it's called a weak chalitza. And because the weak chalitza, the co-wife, does not go free with that chalitza. She needs her own chalitza as well. Because it's a weak zika, and a weak zika has a weak chalitza. So it's not strong enough to permit the tzara, where you didn't do a get to, still has a very strong bond and needs her own different pardon. Now, because it said there's no get after a get, so it comes out that the second woman still has a very strong bond. Nothing happened to the get you gave her is meaningless. So the second woman has a very strong bond, the first woman doesn't, and you said if you gave chalitza to the first woman, the second one is free. And why is she free according to Shmuel? According to Shmuel, we need her own. Says the Gemara, to limit to have it to keep the Shmuel. Shmuel said, "Chol the balas again, like need to so that the co-wife not get part of." Amalach Shmuel said, "Remember we had a big argument before. If the concept of zika exists, if Reuben dies, we right away say that they're already bonded to Shimon as if they're married, or not." So Shmuel says, "When I said ki amri anna aliba demanda zika, I said that if he gave kedushin to let's say Leah, is only according to one of the zika that the bond is so strong." It's a very strong bond. So if you gave a get to one of the women, the other woman is like married to you already. Therefore, it needs a proper chalitza. But if you don't believe in zika, then there's no bond between the co-wife and Shimon either. So the chalitza to the first wife is good enough. The Gemara ain't zika. There's no zika, and therefore he holds the chalitza is good enough. So the Gemara, I'm making an assumption here, which the Gemara is going to repeat it later. Holds that there's no zikr, and the Chachamim will argue whether you repeat the same exercise, probably also arguing the principle of if there's zikr or not zikr, even though the two are independent arguments. The Gemara is making that assumption now. Yes, zikr. They must hold their zikr. Uktani Sefer, and it said in the Sefer of the Chain Atayim, the same reply, let's say Reuben got married to one woman, and then you have Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi have two Yevamim, and we go machas. So Lema, let us say, to have it Yupta, that Amarav, let's just say from here we have a question. So here we're talking about the two brothers, Shimon and Levi, and they both made overtures to Reuben's wife. And we say the same thing here happens. That the first holding the chalitza is good enough. Now there should be a question about because he said that every brother, if you give a chalitza, one give a chalitza and a weak chalitza, every other brother also has to give a separate chalitza. Chalitza psula, a weak chalitza, like over here, which is a weak chalitza because you already gave her a get, and therefore it's a weaker relationship. Every brother has to give their own chalitza, and it doesn't say that in the Raisa. I will say, I hold, and they're not arguing on this principle. They all hold this. They all hold there's no zikr, so there's no relationship between the other wife or between her, Reuben's wife, and any of the other brothers. It's not like in a marriage that she doesn't need a chalitza from any of them. When do we say that you need a chalitza from every one of the brothers? If you say yes, zikr, as if she's married to all of them, then we have to do something to release her. The only thing you're arguing on is whether to replicate the same exercise or not. Let's analyze further. We said before, also if you went ahead and you did let's say Leah Rachel, two wives of Reuben, and Mason get to shine the rules. And again, only the first Maimon effective. Give her a get the chaydos like give her chalitza, but also the all her relatives are forbidden. But mutu credit is the second was permitted. Merdi, the Sover, and Will holds a Maimer Chmaimer. Will holds that the second Maimer was ineffective. So if the second Maimer was ineffective, and you gave a Maimer to let's say, Reuben, two wives, Leah and Rachel, and you gave a Maimer to Leah, then why do we say you have to give a Chalitza? Marry her. So since there's no two wives, you had no connection with the second wife, even though you gave her a Maimer, it's ineffective. So marry the first wife. Is a shame not to see why can't you marry her? Well, she's right, you could, technically. But Zeda, we are worried. We are worried that you might be miyabim your second wife. That you might go ahead and marry the second wife, and you can't, because then it would be like you're taking two wives from one family. Because you gave a minor condition to the first to later, if you can go ahead and marry Rachel, looks like you're marrying two wives. You can't do that. You can only marry. That's why we said don't marry either of them, because not everyone understands the complexity of the law. Rabbi Yochanan says that you should know that Gamliel and Beishamai and Reb Shimon Nazai and Reb Shimon and Ben Azai and Reb Cheli Kulus, they all hold that Maimer Koine Kinyan Gomer. They all hold that the Maimer is not just a tenuous arrangement, a tenuous bond, but actually it's quite solid. And we just said that the first Maimer, he's doubtful that could very well be that the first Maimer is very solid, and therefore there's no room for the second Maimer to take place. The Beis Shammai, now we learned Shloisha Achim, three brothers. Shnayim and there were three brothers. Two of them were married, let's say, to Reuben. She was married to Leah Rachel, the Echem of them, and Levi was a bachelor, a bacher. Meis Echem Balachoy, let's say she would die, also Balmuf the Maimer, and then Levi went ahead and gave her Kedusha. Now Reuben died as well. So she is a sister of, we'll treat her as if it's a sister of the wife of Levi. As Beishamai said, let Levi continue pursuing Reuben's wife, which he gave Maimer to, because as if they're already married. Allah takes him, and then Shimon's wife is free, doesn't need any chalitza or anything else, because she's a sister of a married woman. The only thing he did was Maimer. So he closed me that a Maimer, because the Beishamai is as if they are married. What's the Shimon? Time to learn. Talking about if a 9-year-old boy, had beer, if a 9-year-old boy had beer with a Yevam, and then his brother, who was also 9 years old, had beer with the same Yevam, also had this relationship, is it possible her from marrying any of them? Why? Because the beer of a 9-year-old is considered like a Maimer. So it's as if it's a Maimer after a Maimer, and the Chacham hold a Maimer after a Maimer is effective. Two different brothers with one Yevamos, so that both of them are effective, and therefore you cannot marry two brothers, and the whole thing falls apart. It's possible for both. But Abshimah says it's not become possible. And this is what he says to them. You Chacham say, well, that both brothers rendered her possible, because even though they're 9 years old, it's like it's no worse than a Maimer. Says Rav Shimon, if you're going to treat like a Maimer, and a Maimer is effective, remember Rav Shimon has a suffix, then Bia is also suffix, Bia Sheni, ain't a Bia. And the second one did nothing, so it's only one brother. And Bia Sheni, if nothing happened, then Bia Sheni not made a Bia. Now, but Bia is Bentashik and Maimer Shabbat, but Bia of a 9-year-old is not a proper full Bia, it's considered no better than a Maimer like the Rabbanon. And yet Rav Shimon says, ain't a Bia. Rav Shimon says that it's the second beer is not valid. Why not? Because the first beer took care of everything. In other words, it's a very strong, that a Maimer is very strong. And therefore there's nothing left, no room left for the second person to come along. Says the Gemara, Ben Azai, the time Ben Azai says, yes, Maimer, there's a Maimer after Maimer. The two brothers of Yomachas. If there were two brothers, and let's say Shimon and Levi, and we were married to one woman, each brother has a right to make a Maimer. Okay, so there's a Maimer after Maimer by two brothers. But the aim Maimer, but if, let's say, we was married to two women, and Shimon gave a Maimer to Leah, and then a Maimer to Rachel, nothing happened. Why? Because once you did the first Maimer, and the first Maimer completely cemented your relationship with Leah, there's no room for Rachel to come in. But again, we see that a mimer is not just tenuous relationship, but actually it's very strong, it's solid, and it's solid. And the Chemye, it's like Kini Gom. And the Chemye says, Achas, the Chemye says whether it was through Be'ila, the Achas Chalitza, or whether we're talking about Chalitza, these are the two methods Mahatayra. To either end the relationship or to cement the relationship, so whether you did it through Bia, or whether Chalitza, Bein, Chila, Bein, so whether the beginning, whether the middle, end. Ein Achadeh, whether the beginning, middle, end, there's nothing afterwards anymore. In other words, if you did a Bia, completely your wife. And if you did a Chalitza, it's completely your wife. So the Gemara now, if it was a bia psula, for example, a bia you shouldn't have done. Let's say you gave a get first, and then you do a bia. That bia should never have been done. It's a bia psula, and nevertheless, that bia is only considered like a minor, and you need now a chalitza to end this if you give her a get for the bia. It's not going to be enough. You're going to need a chalitza as well. We're not going to let you go ahead and live with her. What we are going to say is you have to give her chalitza. So we see you need a get for the bia, and you'll need a chalitza. And Tani it says that after bia, nothing else takes effect. You can't do anything else afterwards. So what do we see from here? That it's a maimed, and a maimed is a full kinyan. Okay, that ends today's Gemara. Everyone should have a good day.